What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 135 of Nintendo Noise, Slipscreen Games' weekly Nintendo podcast. I'm your host, Pete Bessie, joined today by my very good friend and co-host, Mr. Max Wright.
Ahoy, ahoy. How are we doing?
Doing good, man. Welcome back to the show. It's been a while.
Yeah, I think this is the show I do the least because Sierra and it can only do sort of non-UK time, whereas I can only do UK time. So
Yeah, and Steve will stay
out.
up until the middle of the night any old time, so...
Steve is a dirty stop out. He'll do anything until the early hours, and then you might not see him for days at a time. Who knows? He's like a cat. When he leaves that house, who knows where he's going?
Yeah, he needs some time to recuperate every once in a while, I guess. But you picked a good week to come back because we've got
things to talk about. Yeah,
we got something fresh this week. That's the thing. I need you to come in on the weeks where there's nothing to talk about and help me fill some air. Right? You're showing up only on the good weeks.
I make the weeks good is what you're there, but I'm the correlation there.
That's what I'm saying. Well, anyway, so what we got to talk about this week is, of course, as of recording today, both the 3DS and Wii U online servers are all officially down for good now. We knew this was coming for a while, obviously, but I think I don't know, it felt like it kind of snuck up on me a little bit, considering I feel like there was so much conversation about it when it got announced, right? Yeah. And then it's like we've kind of all been preparing for the inevitable ever since, right?
Yes.
And
the 3DS probably more so than the Wii U, because the Wii U, while I was fighting for it every goddamn day because I loved that thing, didn't set the world on fire, didn't do very well. The last couple of days on Twitter, I've been like, why are we all talking about the 3D? Why are we talking about the Wii U again? Like, what's going on? Why are people finally coming around to it? People finally realizing they were wrong about it, and then to see this is why they're talking about it, it's because it's being shut down. I was like, oh, okay, right, that makes sense.
And I wanted to talk about it a little bit for a couple of reasons. I think obviously it's a thing that I think has a lot of people feeling a little bit nostalgic, a little bit upset about some of their favorite games no longer being supported. I saw a lot of people talking about like Animal Crossing, New Leaf, and stuff like Mario Kart 7 and some of those games that people were still actively enjoying, even the original Splatoon, and obviously sad to see those games get shut down. But there's already been a couple, I think, bigger negative impacts that people are kind of already noticing, that are kind of being characterized as being a little anti-consumer, as being anti-games preservation. And, I think probably unfortunately going to be the first of many reports like this. But there is also some good news that we'll get to in a little bit. I don't want you to think it's all doom and gloom, right? That there is a lot of really meaningful fan efforts going on behind the scenes now in the fan modding community that are looking to kind of find ways to create workarounds so that people can keep enjoying these games and that they'll be playable for years to come.
These kind of projects, game preservation is very important. Nintendo obviously don't give a single solitary shit. They only care about criminalizing people that do.
Yeah, right, exactly. And instead of presenting a viable alternative so that there wouldn't be an incentive for people to do it, right? But, I want to talk a little bit about some of what people have noticed before we get into the fan stuff. So I saw this first over on Reddit. There was a Reddit user on the Nintendo subreddit whose name is, I think it's TJoeb. Is that how I'm going to say that?
TJoB. TJoB 123.
TJoB, you're probably right. 123, yeah. TJoB 123. Yeah, there you go.
Job is a name. I just don't think it's spelled that way.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. So they had a post over there about how they noticed that you are no longer able to access DLC for Super Smash Brothers anymore. And that's because of kind of the way that DLC is managed on the 3DS, right? It's done on a game-by-game basis. So if you were to delete your Smash DLC, if you were to have, a failure of some kind that led to your memory card being wiped or something like that, the way that you would access it is you have to go into the game itself. You have to open Smash and then go to re-download the DLC. There's no way to do that like on the eShop page. So because of Smash, the way that Smash handles it, it requires you to connect to its servers, and then it launches the eShop after you do that. Because those servers are now shut down, you don't have any way to access that content anymore.
Remind me, what DLC was there for the 3DS version of Smash Brothers? You remember? Because I'm pretty sure maybe it was Mewtwo, I think maybe came a little bit later, but I don't think remember there being much in the way of DLC. I'm probably misremembering this like hilariously bad. Maybe
there was a number of DLC characters, right? And you got stages and stuff like that, just, you know, as we've come to expect with Ultimate, not on the same level, right? Like you didn't get the full season pass kind of set up or anything like that.
I'm looking at it now, and there's a surprising amount. You know, Mewtwo, Lucas, Roy, Ryu, Cloud, Corrin, all these things that I thought some of these actually came on the Switch version. And then you've got a load of stages, Mii Fighter costumes, and then also, I guess, there's loads here actually that you're now losing access to. And I guess if you're a Smash Brothers fan, you're a Smash Brothers player, all of this is in Ultimate. This is all in the base version of Ultimate. So like it's not as if this content has gone forever, like that you know, but for that game it is, and I think that is a shame.
Yeah, it's a preservation issue, and also, you know, I think to point to, you know, the like anti-consumer side of it, it's like, well, I paid for this, you know, and it's like,
yeah, I agree with that.
Nintendo very much was like, oh well, you'll still be able to download anything that you paid for, you know, an indefinite amount of time in the future, and it's like, well, no, I can't, because of the way that, you know, you allowed this to have this kind of disorganized structure where not every game follows the same rules. So now as a result, like, you know, I'm sure this is probably just the first game we've discovered that works this way, right? Like I would be very surprised if this is the only game that's going to be impacted by this.
I wonder if we were to read through the terms of service, the you know, EULA, whatever the hell they call it, the license agreement, there's probably a thing in there about like when the servers are offline, you lose access to your stuff, and like, you know, you probably would have had to agree to that before you buy this. You just wouldn't have read it. So I do think that this is
DRM. This is why people why people don't like digital games. This is why people care about physical copies and everything. It's like,
I agree.
This is what you're concerned about, because as soon as it becomes, you know, no longer profitable to support old hardware, you're not gonna.
No, I agree, but I do also, and I'm probably going to get some negative stuff here because I am saying something people probably aren't going to like. As someone who supports game preservation and does think that games should be sort of still be playable, yada yada, I don't think that every game necessarily needs to be preserved, because I actually do think that because Smash Brothers is Smash Brothers, all these characters, because they have done another Smash Brothers on the Switch that was, you know, it was like a new game, but it was essentially functioned as a sort of upgraded, complete version of Wii U and 3DS with some changes and blah blah blah. There is a version of that game still around, and
per se
we're missing stuff, but I do think that it's not like we're never going to be able to play Smash Brothers again, or that we're never going to be able to play as Bayonetta again, blah blah blah.
No, but I think that I hear what you're saying, because I think the differences between this game and Smash Ultimate are not the same as the differences between, like, you know, N64 to Melee or Melee to Brawl or something like that. But I think that's a really slippery slope in my mind, because then it's like you could apply the same logic to like any series then, right? It's like, why do we need to preserve Street Fighter 2 if we have Street Fighter 3? And it's like, well, they're not the same, you know? And it's like, you know, I think in this scenario, maybe like it's like you said, right? Like there's enough analogous content, right? That like the new version kind of feels like an upgrade of that version, especially because the Wii U was less popular. So like there was less incentive to iterate as much as there was between like Brawl and that game, right? So like I hear what you're saying, but I think, you know, I think particularly when you've got, you know, folks who invested money in the game and the ecosystem to like basically have just like created a system because you were short-sighted, where now like I just don't have access to that content anymore just because, like, it doesn't feel good, right? Like I think it's totally rational, and I think the number of players that want to use that content versus the number who it impacts is probably it's a minority, right? But like I think that like you end up in this situation where, you know, you're validating people's worst fears about digital rights management. And it's like, what do you mean I can't access it? Like I own it, right? Like I paid for it. And ultimately it's like, you don't, and, I think unfortunately, like physical games are really not much of a solution because look at this, right? Like I own a physical copy of Smash 3DS, but I can't access this content if it gets blanked off my 3DS. And, right now that's fine because my 3DS works, but what happens if the battery explodes or if, something happens and the memory card in there gets wiped and then like all this content's just gone unless I, go and find it through alternative means.
Without making this like a wider, without sort of asking you about the wider games preservation conversation, if your 3DS was to die, would you be upset? How upset would you be that you wouldn't be able to access that DLC anymore? I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
I think for me, it's... I think it depends because I think historically, right, my answer would be, like, how much do I care? Probably not that much, right? Because right now I'm not playing my 3DS actively and I'm not feeling the pull to go and play that library in any like major nostalgic way. That said, like that happens all the time though, right? Like we talk all the time on the Steam Deck podcast about how great, it is as an emulation tool. And it's really nice to be able to go back and play old games that, you don't have access to anymore. And with the 3DS, I think there are a lot of games in that library that are really good that I think people will want to go back to. And I think that extends to the DS as well. And it being a unique form factor makes it hard, right? Because like, like my Game Boy, right, I have behind me, right? Like if that stops working, it's like, well, okay, like I can easily get the emulator I need and every game ever released on it and play all the ones that I own somewhere else, right? Like that's an option for me. Whereas with the DS, I think like you end up in this really, dicey situation where unless you're willing to go spend a lot of money on like something like Ioneo's dual screen that it like replicates that form factor, or you're willing to, have a certain amount of technical knowledge or are willing to do the research required to like turn an old phone or some kind of second display into an additional screen on a deck or some other device or whatever, right? Like it is a really, really, because it's so specific, I think it's kind of a tall order to play those games anywhere other than on their native hardware, right? And the fact that you have, what is one of the most popular consoles of all time in the 3DS, right? Like it's one of the most successful handhelds ever. Like it had a pretty big install base. It has a really good, strong library, and it exists in this kind of like halfway generation for Nintendo where they were online, but like they didn't really have a system figured out. And now you have like this entire generation of not very old games that are inaccessible, right? Or are going to become very inaccessible soon. And
you are right that they're not old at all. Like when you think about it, they're not they're previous gen. They're sort of like, I remember playing these games.
They're literally one gen removed from where we are right now. That's kind of crazy.
I do think that has a lot to do with Nintendo's incompetence, and it's a lesson they still haven't probably fully learned.
Right.
But it's something that I think they're, the Wii U and the 3DS, while you could download things digitally, I don't think Nintendo had really prepared for a full, like, the fact that it wasn't, that the games were tied to your account, tied to your console, not your account. The fact that, there's just, the fact that the console shipped with like 32 gigabytes, not even that, like 6 gigabytes or something like that of internal storage.
Yeah.
And you had to have a powered USB-C, like you had to have like a two power cables or a separate power cable to have a hard drive that the Wii U could read on. I just think Nintendo really half-assed digital, didn't believe in it. And it was weird because I remember back on the Wii U days, back when I was sort of like, I was big into the Wii U, people on Reddit, people on sort of like forums were so, because it was Nintendo's first digital console, people were so like, I'm going all digital. They were like gatekeeping, not gatekeeping, they were sort of like feeling superior, like master race, because they were downloading all the games digitally because Nintendo could finally do it. I bet they're fucking kicking themselves now. I bet they cannot believe they did that, because now with the Switch, there's been a huge flip. Everyone on the Switch is now, I'm a physical collector, I buy my games physically because, these games are released physically and people, have a reason to want to get them. Probably because Nintendo fucked around so hard on the digital stuff. However, I do think that we are now with the Switch in a better position. I think Nintendo specifically has made a serious effort this generation to, make people feel more comfortable with digital only. They've sort
Streamline things a bit too.
Yeah, they've sort of offered more storage for especially in the OLED model. The SD card very easy to do. The storage just a lot easier. I think there's been a much better version of sort of an online marketplace that you could. I don't know. I feel quite confident in this in the way that I never felt confident during the 3DS or the Wii U. The fact that they still worked in block on the 3DS when you're trying to download stuff. So like, how many fucking blocks is my SD card that I've had to put in the back of my 3DS? I don't have a fucking. But now it's in gigabytes. Something as simple as that sort of gives me more feeling. I guess. I think that the reason maybe we're seeing these abandoned so quickly, faster than we have ever seen with Nintendo, I think is largely because most Nintendo systems, vast majority of them have had backwards compatibility. So, for example, Wii to Wii U, you could put your Wii discs in, boot into the Wii mode, play your games. Wii to GameCube, you had a whole GameCube in there, ports, controller ports, and all that sort of stuff. 3DS, you could play DS games. DS, you could play Game Boy Advance games. Game Boy Advance, you could play Game Boy games. You go back, you could do this. So those consoles probably those consoles weren't online, but they still had like a lease of life. People maybe were still releasing games because they still worked in the new hardware. With the Switch, it was the first time Nintendo's ever, well, not ever, but for a modern console, they've ever just completely dropped everything they were working on because it no longer supported the 3DS, it no longer supported the Wii U, it no longer supported discs, it no longer supported 3DS cartridges. It was a brand new cartridge. It was a brand new style of system because they partnered with NVIDIA, and it's a different architecture now. That's why Wii U games don't just work on it; they had to be ported and made specifically for Switch. It's a brand new system because it only has you lose the whole second screen element of it entirely. It's just one screen. It's a brand new system, for Nintendo. It was like a massive departure from what they were doing. Even though it seemed like it was just the Wii U but more streamlined, it was a huge departure in terms of what the Wii U could do because it was built around being this two-screen device. Same with the 3DS. And I can see why they've dropped it faster than previous ones, simply because it's very easy for them to do. And they if they kept supporting these consoles, they would have found themselves to be, they would have struggled to do so because the Switch is so different. And hopefully what they do going forward is going to be, because they've simplified it down to a single screen, the gimmick is now much easier to digest. It's just those games on your TV are now in your hand too. Done, sorted. Hopefully those games should be much easier to port across, and there should be less of this issue. And I think hopefully we see like a shared eShop for longer than we have done in the past. I just think we're in early days for Nintendo being competent at doing digital and doing online shops. And I think it's that's probably a large sort of reason why it feels so fast.
I definitely agree with you about the Switch generation, I think, being more set up for a digital future, and the idea that like hopefully my Nintendo games will just move forward with me from now on. And I think that leaves the 3DS and to a lesser extent the Wii U kind of like in this kind of awkward growing pains era. And I think with the Wii U, especially because so many of those games like did get ported, it's maybe a little easier to swallow. But I think with the 3DS being something that is not very old by video game standards, and that like it's already kind of like, getting in a place where like you're running the risk of some of this stuff becoming lost, if people aren't able to preserve it. And again, I think to a point you made earlier, right, with like Nintendo being so outwardly hostile towards people that do this work, I think that makes it feel even worse, right? Like if we did live in a world where Nintendo, because you think about it, right? Like historically, Nintendo was a lot better about this. Like they supported repairs on the NES up until like the Switch generation, right? They kind of historically have supported old hardware for a long time. And for you to see the 3DS, like, like 10 years or something ish removed from its release, like now having the servers go down, having you not be able to access some of this content, like, yeah, it rubs people the wrong way. And I get why. And I think, thankfully, there are already some solutions that are starting to kind of crop up, like thanks to the fan community and the homebrew community. And you can already kind of see, I think, a path forward for us to be able to maintain this content, find the stuff that you're not able to get traditionally, and kind of have these solutions to cover our gaps where Nintendo hasn't. So we're going to talk about that in just a second. But before we do that, let me remind you that this episode of Nintendo Noise is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of April. They are, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valens, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, a.k.a. Sobe, Snackago, Steve Stompy, Susan Loves Cats and Also Boobies, Ty the Dude, Voodoo Vic, and Wakahula. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. You're all the reals to the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. Remember, if you want to go above and beyond just like all of them did, and show your support, you can head over to flipscreen.games. That's our website where you will find links to all the places we are all over the web, including our Patreon, where you can get a bunch of cool perks and goodies like early access to the show. You can also write in. You can find our sister shows. However you choose to get involved or show your support, you can find all of it over there at flipscreen.games. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Nintendo Noise. So, if you are one of these 3DS Wii U players who's bummed about your favorite game going down, I got a solution that I want to bring up for you today. I found this while I was doing some research about, everybody was talking about the 3DS Wii U stuff. I'm poking around, seeing what people are saying about it, seeing how people were feeling. And originally, I figured this would be kind of like a retrospective. We'd look back on some of those games. We'd mourn the stuff that was lost, right? But instead, I found a way that you don't have to worry about that, because we've got a really, really significant fan solution that is called Pretendo. Which you can, we'll have great name. We'll have links to all of this stuff where you can check them out down below. I'm going to get into some specifics, and I'll direct you to those pages in the description. So if you want to go check this stuff out for yourself and get involved, you'll have a bunch of ways you can do that down below. But to give you kind of a overview of what Pretendo is, the Pretendo project is a free open source replacement for Nintendo servers for both the 3DS and Wii U, allowing online connectivity for all, even after original servers are discontinued. Pretendo is open source and aims to recreate the Nintendo network for 3DS and Wii U using clean room reverse engineering. As our services will be both free and open source, they can exist long after the inevitable closure of Nintendo Network. So, basically, this project is a big open source project that is looking to return online functionality to basically every game on these platforms where possible. They do talk about how there are certain games that might not be able to be done because they're run through their own servers, not Nintendo servers. So there's things like that where, like they gave an example of, what was it? Watch Dogs was like a game where it's like, oh, like that was run on an Ubisoft server, so like that's a thing that we couldn't bring back on Wii U, right?
Oh man, everyone RIP to Watch Dogs on Wii U, man. Yeah,
real shame. But aside from that, they're in a pretty good spot. Like they have a lot of these games are progressing pretty well. There are a couple that are already fully playable. If you go to their website, they've got a progress page, and they show like what are the games that they're actively working on and kind of where it's at, like on near the top of the quick nav, right? Like they have like Ironfall Invasion is one of the games that's at 100%, which means they're both competitive and friendly matches have been returned. Whereas like Mario Kart 7 right now only has 50%, where you can do verse race rooms, battle rooms. You can join friends on your friends list, but there's no. It's join to friends from friends list, but there's no join to friends opponents. There's no communities. There's no community rankings. No ghost data. So those are all things that like they're currently working on for that game. And the way that that this works is because it is open source and it's being worked on by like a large team of people who are collaborating. There's no like hard release date or anything like that. It's like functionality becomes available as it becomes available, right? Mm-hmm. So like,
I love shit like this.
Yeah. If you're familiar with this kind of project, it's probably something that you've seen before. If you look on their website, like on the FAQs, it looks like it's not totally up to date. I imagine they've been pretty busy the last couple days. Like it says that it's not currently in a state that's ready for public use on their homepage, but it definitely is. Like, I saw multiple people on Reddit talking about using it already. Like I said, if you go to the progress page, they show that there are multiple games that are playable. And then there's an install page that they've got underneath docs on their website. If you're over on the Pretendo .network page, and there's an install page there that has active guides on how you can install it for 3DS, Wii U, or for certain emulators. Like, you can use it with Semu, and then Citra as well.
Which I think is wicked. I think because those things already have, well, some emulators already have online functionality. I know that the what was the Switch one that just died? Yuzu had online functionality. You could like trade in Pokemon in it, for example.
Yeah.
And I think that because hardware is, people aren't going to want to go and buy a 3DS to play these games, but if they want to play, on Citra, or they want to download Cemu and they want to boot up Xenoblade Chronicles X, which is one of the last few games that hasn't made its way over to the Switch. There's online functionality in that, online missions, stuff like that is now lost, completely lost. There's features you can't do anymore. Whereas you could boot up your emulated version of that game, play it, in a better state than you probably could on the Wii U with all of the sort of improved stuff. Play on the Steam Deck as well, why not? But also then take advantage of Pretendo here and still get all those online features. I think it's great that they've included emulators here and haven't just focused on the consoles, because, like you say, if a console breaks, you're going to have to try and source a new one and then try and sort the first.
And eventually that's not going to work, right? Like, we'll see, right? Because it's like, you look at, like, for certain handhelds, like the Game Boy aftermarket is like really thriving, right? There are people that still buy and sell and repair Game Boys, and like, you could get one. That will probably continue for the 3DS, but like, you don't see that as much with like the Game Boy Advance or the DS, right? So like, you probably will, but again, it'll probably be expensive. It'll probably be something that you're getting like because you really miss that form factor and you want that native experience. Years from now, right? 10 years from now, 20 years from now, if some young gamer wants to go check out Animal Crossing New Leaf, they're going to do that with an emulator. So yeah, emulator support is definitely really great to see. One of the other kind of things that I think a lot of people will probably be wondering is like, how does it work with your Nintendo Network ID? It will not support your existing Network ID. You're going to have to get a new one. They said that it is possible potentially that a Nintendo Network ID to Pretendo Network ID migration like could eventually be possible. They say it would be risky and require sensitive user data we do not wish to hold. So it seems unlikely that that'll ever happen, unless I guess some fan creates it and then does that. But your mileage may vary. Go ahead.
Sorry, go on.
Go ahead.
I was going to say I did see on the website that part of the things that they've been working on, friends lists, are 100% working on the 3DS and the Wii U. So if you were to go on there, make your new Pretendo thing, you could start right now making friends and sort of playing Animal Crossing or Mario Kart, whatever games are accepted now. But you can, play with friends and sort of actually have that experience. However, it's probably worth noting that Nintendo's friend system is shocking, pointless, to the point that you can just see what they're playing and invite them to stuff. There's no communication, there's none of that stuff, which is a shame. Unless they think about bringing back the Miiverse, that'd be pretty cool. That
is one of the things they are working on. If you look on their progress page, actually, maybe that's one of the ones that they already have. Hold on, let me see. Maybe not, because I know they're working on it. I think they have a special name for it. Yeah, it's called Juxtaposition. Is what it's called, and that's their Miiverse replacement. Right now, it's only at 39%.
Okay.
They have create new models, communities page, activity feed, posts, and user pages on Wii U specifically. The 3DS posts and notifications and stuff are all still missing. So there's still quite a bit to work on, but that's one of their like major projects as well. That has like its own page and everything. Yeah, juxtaposition, I think.
I think that is a word that exists. I know it.
So the other thing that you're going to want to know is you are going to need to hack your device to access this. Hacking your 3DS is, I think, like it's more involved than the Wii U. With the Wii U, you only need to access the homebrew launcher. which you can just like do through a web browser exploit, which is like pretty easy. Whereas like with the 3DS, like it is a little bit more involved. But I think if you're somebody with like any level of technical know-how, like if you followed one of our tutorials like on the channel for something with your Steam Deck or something like that, or if you've gone through the trouble of installing emulators or any kind of homebrew or anything like that, you should be able to do it yourself pretty easily. There's quite a few guides available. I won't link to any of them for obvious reasons.
From memory, there was a game you had to download, like some ninja game on the eShop, and that gave you a way in. I think Ocarina of Time might have also had like a back entrance way into the system, which is weird that that's how it works, but that's how I remember it happening anyway.
Yeah, and I think
I will say that if
go ahead.
I was going to say, I will say that if you're sort of someone who uses your 3DS and Wii U still, I think you should have already had it hacked for a long time.
Probably at this point, right?
As soon as Nintendo gives up on it, you're like, right, cool. Because as soon as they shut the eShop down, you can't buy anything new. Whereas if you were to hack it, baby, it's all available to you.
Yeah, that was
you can't give them your money.
That was when I did it, or when I started using it again, I guess. So yeah, I would, you can find that information very easily. It's very it's a pretty easy process, and it's not like a big secret or anything how to get it done. So just keep that in mind. They did announce yesterday, like when servers went down, like officially, that they actually had a hack that they'd figured out using a stock Wii U. So you actually don't need to use Homebrew on Wii U anymore to do this.
Okay.
I'll read from their blog on the subject. They said, as a parting gift to you all, we're releasing our private SSL exploit for the Wii U, SSSL. Found by our very own Shutterbug, this exploit allows users to connect to Pretendo Network from a stock Wii U with no homebrew or custom firmware at all, only a DNS change. We've been holding on to this exploit for this day for quite some time in case Nintendo decided to issue patches for it. Select services which use their own SSL libraries are unsupported. This includes, and this is where the third-party thing comes in. This includes several third-party titles like Watch Dogs and YouTube, as well as titles which run in an embedded browser. That is a easy sentence to write and a hard one to read. Like the TV, the eShop, and the Miiverse applet. Miiverse functionality in games is still supported through SSSL. We hope this new method of connecting will be useful for those who have trouble installing Homebrew, those who are worried about mods, and for users who may live in areas where local law may make it more difficult to install mods. And then they have an updated setup guide for folks who want to take advantage of that as well. So,
I was going to say, show Nintendo are now going to come back on specifically just to patch this out. But,
maybe.
I think it's great that they were holding it back. It's very, very clever of them to sort of not to wait until it's sort of there's nothing they can do about it to have it done. I think that's great. Also, yeah, like you say, people maybe don't want to hack or they don't want to know how to hack. And I know this from sort of being in Steam Deck communities. People just don't. They want to be given an example of here's how you do it. Here's a step-by-step guide. They don't want to have to work things out for themselves.
Tinker, yeah,
because that's why they buy consoles, not PCs.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think it's just also like it speaks to just the fact that not everybody has that skill set. Like I think if you're somebody who knows how to do that stuff or you're comfortable doing it, right? Like, right, like I can follow a guide. I can't figure that out from the ground like the way that Steve can, right? Where he's like, this is a problem and I'm going to reverse engineer because he's a programmer, right? But it's like,
dweeb.
I'm not. Yeah, exactly. Right. Dweeb. And yeah, it's like, I think for the rest of us, right? For those of us that don't have that skill set, like, yeah, it's amazing that you can have a solution like this, that you can just go in and like tweak a couple settings and you're back online. Like that's really cool.
Absolutely.
So if you do want to check this out, like I said, we'll have a bunch of links down below where you can kind of get involved. They do have their progress page where they're showing like what's actively being worked on. They are taking donations to like help with funding the project. But right now they're currently 166% funded. So, they're in pretty good shape. Hopefully, the way that they've set up donation models doesn't create, questions for Nintendo, but
we've seen this recently, haven't we? But hopefully that is like, I think because there's less of a case here than there was with the Switch, because a lot of the Yuzu case was based on the fact that they're
actively pirating new software.
Yeah, and then
And this is
using
not
to sort
that.
of boost the thing and all that stuff. Yeah, this isn't that at all. I think they're going to be fine.
Yeah, I think if Nintendo, yeah, fingers crossed. If Nintendo were to come after them for this, I think it would be really a bad look, because it's like,
Yeah,
you're not doing this. Like, they're doing a thing that you didn't want to do. So like, what the hell, right? Like, it's not like they're making money hand over fist.
Mm-hmm. I also don't think Nintendo are above bad, making themselves look bad.
Not at all.
They just
They don't care.
So,
They don't need to. So the other bigger thing that you can do, though, if you don't have any money, or if you don't want to, give them money, that's fine. You can be involved in what's known as a network dump. So this is really, really important for any project like this. And I'll let them explain it. They say one of the best ways to support the project is to help in gathering network dumps of games. These network dumps can be used by developers to help understand how the servers operate in a live environment. This kind of data greatly simplifies the development of the servers, as it removes a large amount of guesswork and reverse engineering. In order to make this easier, we have developed a suite of internal tools to capture and read network traffic, as well as make use of several off-the-shelf tools. This document will go into detail about how to capture these packets yourself and how you can submit them to us for use in research and development. This document will be fairly long. Please read it completely before submitting any dumps. So I will have a link to that down below as well if you want to log in using one of your consoles. If you're still actively using a 3DS or a Wii U, you can provide them with network dumps that will help further their project. And you've seen a lot of people the last couple of days on Reddit talking about this and everything. They've been getting a lot of data the last couple of days, so let's keep it coming.
I'm really laughing at the word dumps. Sorry. I thought I was above it. I really thought the first time you said it, I was like, no, I didn't laugh at that. The second and third time you said it, I'm
How many times I got to say network dumps before you giggle?
It was twice, was it? Well, but do you know what? Finish talking about this. I want to bring up I want to talk about.
Cool. Yeah, just the kind of the last PSA I'll give you is, if you want to keep up with the project or whatever, you should go join their Discord. They've got a link to that as well. They're pretty active over there, and you can also use that for finding people to play with. So if you're playing a specific game and you need people to squad up with in Mario Kart 7 or whatever, head over there and make some new friends.
So I was just thinking, while we're talking about the Wii U and Nintendo not being afraid to make themselves look bad, I for a second there just thought, what's the last time I can remember Nintendo doing something that was like, everyone was like, what a great move. Like, they didn't have to do that, but they've done it. And I thought that, obviously there was when the Wii U was failing and Iwata took a pay cut instead of affecting everyone else. Great. That might be the last one.
Sure.
But if you got into Nintendo with the Switch, or maybe you skipped the Wii U as many people did, and you came from the Wii, or you used your first Nintendo console, and you're used to Nintendo really fucking nickeling and diming you, right? Paying online, full price games that never go down in price. There's no Nintendo Selects, blah blah blah. The Wii U did something that I've never seen Nintendo do before, and I've never done it since. When you bought, I want to say, it was Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. When you bought Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, I want to say it was that game, but I can't remember. For a limited time after that, like 3 or 4 months after that, you could just choose one of like 6 games for free, and they were like full price. Like, you could get Wind Waker HD, you could get Monster Hunter Tri or Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate, whatever it was called then. You could get Pikmin 3, I think. There were so many like these full price titles that you could get just for buying Mario Kart. They've never done anything like that. Obviously, it shows how much they were floundering.
Desperation,
like but it's something that I'd never think about that. But just thinking about then, I was like, holy shit. Nintendo were just giving shit away. They never give shit away.
I think
never.
Yeah, I mean, I think any time that there is a historic or interesting or novel kind of like interaction like that, it pretty much always boils down to there being a desperate reason for it, right? Like, you're aggressively cutting price to try to strong arm a competitor, right? Or you're giving stuff away because you want to, it's like the Epic Games thing we talked about on Steam Deck recently, of like, you're trying to close ground between you and a competitor, or, like Game Pass, right? Like, being such a great value is because Xbox was behind and they needed to have a value proposition, right? The reason you don't see Nintendo do stuff like that is because historically Nintendo is not behind, right? aside from the, with pretty rare exception, right? Like during the NES generation, they were utterly dominant. During the Super Nintendo generation, they were utterly dominant until they weren't, and then they were again, right? Well, back and forth a little bit, right? But obviously Sega was able to really, really take a considerable amount of that market share. But then they ended up kind of being, they floundered near the end of that generation, right, as well. So, it was short-lived for sure. It was a lot of very strong, aggressive marketing for sure.
Yes.
Absolutely. And, obviously with the N64, it was a little bit more contested, but part of that was because PlayStation was being incredibly aggressive, right? It was like they were not charging a licensing fee to get your game on their console because they wanted to establish themselves as a new player. And, the GameCube was obviously kind of a downturn, and then the Wii U was like their most successful generation to date, and Wii U is a bit of a downturn, but the DS and the 3DS are both really successful. So it's like, aside from kind of the early aughts and then going into the Nintendo Switch, you've not really often seen Nintendo in a position where they're really put on their heels and they need to react and make aggressive moves to stay profitable and stay ahead of the game. And like, that's when you see companies make decisions like that, So right now it's like, I wouldn't expect anything like that for them for a long time because they're in a great position, right? They're coming off of, potentially now their most successful console ever again. And, they're sitting on, we talk all the time, like they're sitting on, I forget what it is in yen, but I think it's like $4 billion or something like that. They're sitting on an insane amount of money, let alone the fact that they are chasing down a new console generation, which, knock on wood, that goes well. And then they are expanding the business in a lot of meaningful ways between like getting into feature films and theme parks and all that stuff. And, a lot more merchandising, right? You see a lot of Mario stuff in toy stores and stuff, everything now. So, they're sitting pretty. And I think unless the Switch 2 comes out and it struggles to connect, or it comes out and sales are slow, or like people are slow to switch over, or what, like, unless you have a situation like that where it's like the first few months of the 3DS where you're like, like we gotta fix this up. That was actually the last time that they did that, right? It was the 3DS
Ambassador program.
The Ambassador program.
The 3DS Ambassador program. The 3DS came out before the Wii U, I think. Didn't it?
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Was like, I see what you're saying. That was, I guess, more recent. But that's another recent example, right?
I get what you mean. Yeah.
The Ambassador program was like, okay, like this console's not working. We need to slash the price. What are we going to do to make it up to the people that invested, right? Like, I think unless something like that happens, we're not going to see that happen anytime soon, because
GBA
why would you?
ROMs. What value that? Exclusive GBA ROM. They didn't even
so cool.
They didn't even boot in the OS. They booted separately. They were just emulated using the 3DS. What a time.
Yeah.
What a time.
Really, really crazy. And something I was like salty about for years. I'm like, what? Can I just get one? Like, can I buy into this like program?
I am salty that they now cost £50 a year or whatever. But
yeah.
Hey, mate, I could talk for a long time about how the Switch Online for me is just a failure. But maybe not this. Maybe not this week. Maybe another time. Next time I'm on. Next time you're desperate.
Next time.
I'm on,
Perfect. That's great. I'll hold you to that because we're gonna have a week soon enough.
Topics.
I'm sure. All right, so we're gonna wrap it up there for the day, guys. If you want to let us know your fondest memories playing online with the 3DS or the Wii U, or if you want to let us know your experiences with Pretendo, now that I turned you on to it this week, make sure you write in all the ways that you can over to flipscreen.games. That's a website where you will find links to all the places we are all over the web, all the ways you can get in touch or get involved. You'll find right over there. So go over there and do it however you choose to get involved. We thank you for tuning into another episode of Nintendo Noise. For the crew, I've been Pete. He's been Max. We'll see you next week.